Colombia is in South America. It's a country of 20 million inhabitants, of whom just 1% are tribal Indians. The Cuiva are a group of nomadic hunters who once roamed the plains which run eastwards from the Andes to the Orinoco. Today, their territory is restricted to a small area between the rivers Meta and Casanare. In Colombia, only 600 Cuiva are left, and across the border in Venezuela, there are perhaps another 400. Early in 1970, a white man and 2 Cuiva Indians made a journey up the river Agua Clara. Their aim was to visit a small group of Cuiva who hitherto had avoided all contact with white people. Guayana, the older man, had relatives in this group, but he hadn't seen them for 5 years. He'd been afraid to pass through white settlers' land on the lower reaches of the river. Now, with Bernard Arcon, a French-Canadian anthropologist who'd been living with his people for the past 18 months, he felt safe enough to go.
If I was to make a film about these people, I would just, I think, put the camera down and let it roll for the whole length of the film. And what you would see, most likely, is a man just sitting in his hammock, yawning, scratching his nose, laughing to his children, and maybe shouting after his wife. And then, maybe for the first time in history, you would have seen these people as simply human beings. People who do scratch their nose and laugh at their children, and shout at their wives. They're not always just taking drugs and dancing and hunting and running around naked in South America. That to me would be a first in history. A first in history much more important than making first contact with some group up some kind of, white man made it again, great explorer. Yes, sir. And this to me has never been done.
Bergen? Bergen wood?
Bergen kopi.
Kopi?
Ya. Wood no ta.
No, boy no ta.
Wood no ta.
Boy no ta.
Wood no. Wood no.
Wood tiga?
No.
Wood tiga no ta?
Tahu no ta.
Tahi no ta? Tanami?
Đấy.
Tanami?
Tan.
Bông khi?
Đấy.
Bông khi?
Bông phơi khinh.
Bông khi?
Bông phơi khinh.
Bạc à?
Bạc khinh.
Bạc khinh?
Bạc khinh.
Bạc khinh. Ane pana?
Ane pana.
Ane pana?
Ane pana.
Aibi?
Hota aibi.
Hota aibi?
Itu hota aibi.
Hota aibi? Tibi tahi me poro?
Hota aibi.
Tahi me poro?
At first I was amazed by the fact that these people can kill fish with bows and arrows. when you think of, the, is it called reflection of water? I mean, the fish is not where you see it, right? And you have to calculate how deep it is and shoot it like that. I was saying, how incredible. I was amazed by that. But after 2 years, I'm amazed by the fact that they simply live just the way I live.
Nhìn ra đi. Nhìn ra đi.
Some anthropologists these days talk about hunting and gathering society as the original and the real affluent society. I know that the Cuiva here will spend something like 15 or 16 hours a day just sitting in a hammock, chatting with neighbors, joking a lot, singing, and his workday is indeed very brief, much, much briefer than what we are used to in industrial society. When a hunter comes back to camp, he will put down whatever he got during his trip. And usually his wife or some female relative will cut the meat and give it away to other people. All the food is shared by all in camp. Never would a man keep food for himself. You catch a 5-pound fish, and I catch exactly the same kind of fish, 5 pounds also. I cut it in half, you cut yours in half. I give you the tail of mine, you give me the tail of yours. Well, in purely economic terms, we're not better off after than before. In social terms, we're much better off afterwards. We've exchanged, we're in a relationship. I know that you give me food, and you know me as someone who gives you food. What we see here is a group of about 40 people. That is to say, it's not an ongoing society. I mean, in order to survive socially, you need a group of, well, I don't know, we can argue on this figure, but it's more or less 400 people. Within this group, you can intermarry, you can exchange goods, women, etc. Mind you, this group of 40 could survive as a group of 40 if they had around them other groups of 40 forming a total unit of more or less 400. They probably had that 10 or 15 years ago and they could carry on living. Now what happened is that the routes of communication to the other groups have been cut. They can no longer move. They're trapped. savanna and this forest can be occupied by anyone who just comes in one day, starts working, has to fence the area he wants, and it is his by law. And now he can sell it, he can rent it, he can do what he wants with it.
Bueno, ahorita mire, le vamos a echar una respa que la coliene. Ya está muy bueno, ¿no?
Y hasta aquí, bueno.
I mean, if there's a law somewhere saying that the Indian has a right to this land, who's going to expect one of the Cuiva to sue someone in court and go to Bogota and claim his rights? It is quite usual for these people, to move camp after about 4 or 5 days. But I think in this case, there's also the fact that they have been worried for quite some time by the fact that the settlers are close to this area. There's also the fact that the film crew in the last few days has been bothering them. I went through the same experience when I first came to the area. And when they left, I left with them. And after a while, they realized, I suppose, that I was not here for raping women or stealing them. And finally, everything settled down. They carry very little. They travel very light. I came in with all sorts of junk that we always carry around. Things that I thought were necessary, medicine and whatnot, clothing, etc. And, well, after some 17 or 18 months of living here, I travel as light as they do. And I'm much happier about it. It's much easier to do that.
Only 1 year ago, Don Vicente, a white settler, came up the Agua Clara and staked his claim to Indian territory. Now, the land which he's burning and which he'll soon start to fence marks for the present the frontier between the Indians and the whites.
¿Qué signos han visto ustedes de los indios aquí?
No, candelas ahí arriba.
¿Qué, en este lado ahí?
Sí, allá, de arriba.
¿Y cómo han visto esas candelas? ¿Cuándo han visto?
No, se ve así para este tiempo de ahorita de verano, que es cuando se ponen pales secos, le estampan candela, todo eso. Y se mira la humarea. Pe.
¿Ellos han matado a alguna gente, amigos de ustedes?
En tiempos pasados, sí, hace tiempos. Pero allá en la costa de Guachiría, pues mataron una familia.
¿Por qué tiene tantos perros aquí?
Porque hay para que lo alerten a uno. Perro ladra ya cualquier cosa, cualquiera viene. Sea una persona, sea un indio, sea un animal, un tigre, un león, cualquier animal así.
Entonces ustedes tienen miedo de los indios aquí, ¿no es cierto?
Pues miedo siempre. Siempre hay que tenerles miedo porque ellos son siempre peligrosos.
Y son bravos.
Son bravos, sí.
¿Y usted quiere que los indios van a trabajar aquí para usted?
Claro. Ahora tiene uno quien le ayude.
¿Y qué tiene aquí usted para que atraerlos aquí?
Ay, aquí lo que hay es sal, que es lo que más atrae a ellos. Lo más que les gusta. De hecho, ellos cuando consiguen la sal, esa la comen como comer uno el dulce, la panela.
Downstream and closer to the white settlements, another group of Cuiva have already tasted the salt.
Five years ago, these people were more or less in a similar situation to the group living on the Agua Clara that we just visited. I mean, they had no clothes, very few cooking pots, and they had very little contact with the outside world. And I think it's not exaggerated to say that these people here represent, in a sense, the Agua Clara people 5 years later. If you ask the Cuiva, what is the role of the woman? What is the role of the man in society? They will tell you that the men are the hunters. The men are the only ones killing. Women are the fruit collectors. They will tell you that the men bring the meat in to camp. The woman will cut it up and will cook it. And there's a very long list of the things that men should do, that women should do. Very, very often I found that what happens is that the territories for fruit collecting and for hunting are very, very close physically. The man will hunt on the side bank or on the lake or in the water. The woman will collect the fruits of the vegetable very, very close to the water. So they go together, they do the traveling together.
¿Y qué va a hacer?
Thôi
The amount of hours a day that a man spends in very close company to his wife is amazing. I mean, there's no story about going off at 8:30 in the morning to the office and coming back at 5:30 in the evening. And you see the wife when you go and you see her when you come back. It's like if the wife goes to the office with you, in other words. We cannot believe for 1 minute that people can run their lives without having someone who's responsible somewhere for what we're doing. May it be socially, the police or the judge or prime minister or something, or may it be religiously. There must be a God somewhere who's watching us, and he's the one responsible, and he's the great authority, and he's going to punish us. And these people don't have that. I mean, every man is responsible for himself. I've been asking myself for quite some time, why are these people nomadic? Especially since I've become convinced that they could survive physically if they stayed at the same place, if they were sedentary. So I've listed up reasons given for leaving a camp. There must be hundreds of reasons. Probably the most beautiful one, to me anyway, is when they say, oh, we've seen this camp for too long now. Let's go and see somewhere else. They travel very, very frequently by any standard of comparison. For example, last November, we made 47 camps, and we have slept in 27 different places. I think one of the main reasons why they move constantly like that has to do with taste. At any moment, you will have different sources of food in different parts of the territory. In other words, they will be in a camp exploiting one source of food, and then somebody will say, oh, it would be good to eat another fruit. And if everybody agrees, well, then they just pack up and go. I've calculated that between the moment when the decision to move is taken and the moment when all the canoes are floating on the river, when they've left the camp, it takes between 5 and 7 minutes.
Ya viene para acá otra vez. Yo creo que arriba le queda cortito.
Pero no mire la máquina todo el tiempo, mejor no. Para allá.
Cattle rancher and horse breeder Gabriel Gonzalez has lived in the Llanos for 25 years. He's one of the old pioneers, and when he first reached the plains bordering the River Meta, no one lived here except the Indians. Now these grasslands are fenced and owned by the Llaneros, some with thousands of head of cattle which roam the same territory the Cuiva once hunted. Today the scene has changed, and it's Don Gabriel who allows the Cuiva to camp on his land.
Dígame, ¿qué es su propio pensamiento sobre los indios Cuiva?
Pues
¿Cómo son ellos?
los indios Cuivas, los de aquí, Lo que le haría falta era que los pusieran en una granja o les dieran un pedazo de tierra para que ellos trabajen, ¿no? Porque prácticamente ellos son mansos, pero entonces no trabajan. Hombre, yo no puedo certificar de que sí los matan, porque como le digo, a mí no me consta, ¿no? Lo que pasa es que cuando los indios hacen mal, los llaneros salen a recoger sus ganados y sus bestias, sus marranos, y entonces dicen que es que los andan matando.
Pero ahora hay gente que tiene problemas, ¿no es cierto?
Hombre, quién sabe, por allá por las aguas claras arriba, he oído decir de que hacen males y que los tienen sus inconvenientes con los blancos con los indios. Dicen que para arriba, por las aguas claras arriba, hay una indiada que llaman los guasimares, completamente salvajes todavía.
Dígame una cosa, ¿qué piensan ustedes de los indios, digamos, como esos indios en aguas claras arriba?
Completamente animales, porque ellos no usan ni prendas íntimas, completamente desnudos como cualquier animal. Yo los he encontrado así,
Sí.
completamente desnuditos, como ver un caballo, una res.
Baju tu ni. Kau lagi. Apa dah hai semua hai yo. Ini mu thai. Ini hui baru. Kau aja. Ah. Ngoh na.
Like anybody else, the Cuivas have neighbors. Now, there is a certain procedure to follow when there is an immediate contact that will be made with another group. What the Cuiva will do is take all their belongings and put them away in the forest. In other words, hide them from your neighbors who are coming to visit you. This is not because you're stingy and you don't want to give to them, but it's because you prefer talking to the man first and introducing what you have slowly in the course of the conversation. According to the laws of economics ruling these communities, if all the goods were in view of the neighbor, he could just come in and say, well, look, you have this and that and that and that. And you would be a very stingy man if you don't give him quite a lot of what you have. So if the other man doesn't know exactly what you have, you run a lesser risk of being an antisocial.
Aja. Ha. Atau oi hu.
Apa sih dia terme?
Aina.
Aku tanya kita kena nerjore.
Aina.
Ha.
Mukutere hamu itu yahi.
Eh?
Mukutere itu yahi.
Aino.
Ah. Baik tak kamu hej buat. Pakai jahi kera. Tahu dia dah jam, hatara kau siapa kakak? Saya kan bincang dah jam. Dah jam. Pak. Ya, behela weh. Ya, pedam. Bisa behela weh ni siapa? Orang ni terbaru ya bincang.
Traders come up on the river to sell to the settlers the goods that they need. Now, the Cuivas come into contact with these traders, and they also want to obtain these same goods. Now, to get these goods, they must buy them. And to buy them, they must get the money. And to get the money, sometimes they might sell the trader a hammock or meat, or sometimes even a canoe. But most of the time, to get this money, they go to a farm and work for a farmer. And this is where they get into real close contact with the other culture.
Pero vivita estás bicha. ¿Y la puñaleta en el negro?
Dígame, le metiste cuchillo pico. Como que hay que sacar cosas, ¿no? Es que no se ha muerto. Bajitas, bajeritas.
Con el cacho, ¿yo? Yeah.
To the Indians, animals which roam the land are game and free to be hunted. But to the llaneros, who have cleared and fenced this land for grazing, their cattle are their livelihood. Miguel Espitia arrived in the Llanos in 1958. He'd fled from the violencia, the civil war which ripped his hometown. He had no money, so first he worked for rich landowners. 5 years ago, he bought this ranch. Now, he owns 1,000 head of cattle and more than 8,000 acres of land. In the past 2 years, the population of this region has more than doubled, with truckloads of people pouring in from the central highlands of Colombia.
I have in fact quite a lot of sympathy for these people. I've been here long enough to see what their conditions of life are. You have small colonials coming in alone with very little money, working very, very hard to start their farm, cut the forest, have their cattle and make a living. These people seem to be pushed away, in fact, from other areas of the Llanos by economic and demographic pressure. They're pushed out of other areas. They have to come here. Otherwise, it's for them it's the slums of Bogota, all the slums of somewhere else. Should Cuiva come to visit these settlers, he would normally, expect to be given his own equal share of the food and his own equal share of everything these people own. That, to him, would be the normal way to behave between human beings. Now, from the settler's point of view, he cannot, of course, give away all his food and give away everything that he owns. He is part of the Colombian economy, the Western type of capitalistic economy. And on the other hand, the Indian who comes in, who sees the man not giving him his food, not giving him his belonging, begins to view the settler as a very uncivilized person, as someone who is even dangerous for society, someone who do not respect the rules. This is a situation where two cultures, two economic systems, in this case, which are based on perfectly opposite sort of basic proposition, are put into contact with one another. So if they're going to live together, one of the two has to change. This is where the Cuivas originated. The whole of Cuiva society, every man, woman, and child came out of this hole to populate the world. Now this site has been taken over by the whites, has been fenced off, is now part of a farm, and is a grazing ground for cows. Drugs are probably the most difficult parts of the Cuiva culture for me to describe or to try explaining it. I remember in the very first months of research, I would slowly start asking this sort of question like, what is it all about and what does it do for you? And the answer I would get all the time is, well, first, you will know when you take it. And secondly, well, if you take it, you will know. You see what I mean? To take the drugs is to know. Knowledge. I think it's probably at the very core of this whole culture.
ta kana winu ta ya pi huse không ta ya pi hube hoy tayo me se moi ta me se dogi han me ta ya pi hube ko yai hera meru jioba không pa de không pa ne pon pe huyin men thobu không men thobu men thobu ta men thobu no pa hano ta ya pi tigti aha hiwi ne tikai aha ne tikai ma wat ui wat ba me thobi hoy tay me to dobi hanti me to ko yai im hoyo sabo ko bari ji ta ya pi hiji hu se bari ji pare pa me thobu me si bim hoyo au bo ta ha ite to tau
ya en heuta bar hot te wai oto pe segonji bo kwa pate chinaru te wayo oto pe bu tu thega ya tu bane wa men thoba nè tôi thấy cái tôi chẳng bao tu ahi bi nè to con nè to cá to ba bao nè goi be hot pate ta wai bar ot pa ka inum pa hon me kham tan oi pi mana chinaru pate ot pena yau tu bana kompu yau tu bana chinaru pa hombe boga pi tu jai bi thabut ko jai pa hata di dero se kunci pomena koi chumet pomena buno ba ho ota pohon pe ho yo bu boneka ba ho ne to ta no ne ho na mo hana bu hana men to buno bu pa te ta ho yo te kunci tinaru ta ko diwa te kunci pa ho be hoti ta ho yo be hoti pa te ta ho be hoti tinaru pe wa wi be hoti thab hoti ke betina thab hoti he chungwa bu thi thab awi mutan daji mutan thab po thi tan ne kano he ne kano e wa inu wa tung bewayo no watan auto buno bun tu wota buno bun ka pe kupeto pe hutu duya ba kota aten nauta nento to bagota pe han bagota pe nenta kada han bagota nento bagota bu pun ek bunado han tu ko han te kanye bu pun han te kanye de nek de ko bu pun ko de ka hange de nek de koy be matun.
The center of the white man's culture is Cravo Norte, and the Indians come here to work. But the world in which they find themselves offers little they can understand. They're outsiders, and they work for the llaneros often with no payment except alcohol.
Sometimes I wonder how these people can carry on like this. I mean, especially when they come to a small village like Cravo Norte, where they will camp across the river, and they will camp only to the village to work for the whites. And maybe part of the answer might come from the fact that when a Cuiva dies, one half of his soul returns to create another Cuiva, while the other half goes away to create a white man. For example, the death of an old Cuiva will create an old white. A pregnant Cuiva will create a pregnant white. The death of a baby Cuiva creates a white baby.
No la haga que no chinchorre, mijo.
Téngala duro.
Duro. No, sí, no. Que usted le da así, no le dé.
Con cuidado porque estilla. Tú.
Esta es la navaja. Hombre, el hombre me volvió malo para esto con hombre. Eso sí, eso sí. Eso es.
No, no, la tiene usted. ¿Usted tiene cera?
Bueno, lo que hacen en lugar de estar pendejeando ahí, hombre, estoy cansado, yo aquí mismo me tiene asado usted, hombre.
No.
¿Sería?
No.
¿No sería?
Ese carajo está presentado ahí.
Está caliente, dañe, mala. Esta joda es la que calienta, esa que está arriba es la que... ¡A este gallo tenido!
Vamos, gallo pajizo, una picadita lejos, gallo pajizo,
Llena de 40
Pique gallo pajizo, carajo. Pique gallo pajizo.
There's more than one way to kill the Indians. You can kill them the obvious way, with a gun. Or you can kill them in a more subtle way. Some of the settlers around here, I've killed them physically. Most people around here, and the missionaries, will try to kill them culturally, more slowly, in sort of a torture. If you bring in all these goods, European goods, foreign goods to them, if you try to convert them to a sort of Christian ethic, what you might end up with is a dead culture. You will actually have killed the culture. And I say you would have killed the Cuiva because there shan't be any more Cuivas, they will be Colombians then. They would have been integrated into the lowest level of the Colombian lowest class. To me, to kill them physically or to kill them culturally are just two sides of the same coin. There is no objective criteria which would allow us to judge if these people were better off before, or if they're better off with clothes, undernourished, working for settlers in the area, discovering prostitution and alcoholism, and being converted to the evangelical faith. Then I can only give you my very personal opinion. But I think the whole question is a bit futile, because the need for all the foreign goods has been forced upon them. And it would be just as horrible to say to them, well, put your clothes away, you were much better off before, and go back to the woods and forget about the rest of the world. I only hope that when they find out that their old culture had some answers to the problem of living in this environment, and that the new culture is nothing more than a different set of answers, And maybe that the old answers might have been better than the new ones. I only hope for them that when they realize that, they will not realize that they have forgotten most of the old answers.